So jealous hackers cut me off in part 1. So in this part 2, I've already proved my point beyond any doubt. Part 2 is about wisdom. Proverbs 8. It says, wisdom walks in the way of righteousness along the path of justice. Proverbs 8:20. I walk in the way of righteousness along the path of justice. It starts off by saying, does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice at the highest point? Okay? The pinnacle, the entrance point, the gate. Okay? So it also goes on to say that wisdom was the first of God's work. So point number 4 is that wisdom is the first of God's work and only comes in the way of righteousness along the path of justice. So it's not doing God justice for the world to present another king after I'm gone. So therefore, I am the last possible king because of tech, breeding, and ill-gotten gains, the way I've been treated. And Proverbs 16:10 says the divine verdict is on the lips of a king. His mouth must not err in in judgment. Okay, and it has various translations, right? It speaks as an oracle. God's verdict is on his mouth. That's what it's getting at. Okay. So point number 4 is wisdom ends with me. It is unwise to be alive after I'm gone. It is unwise. We'll get into that in a later point. Why, overkill, that it's unwise to breed and it's unwise to be alive after I die. Point 5, Proverbs 34. Who but God goes up to heaven and comes down? Who holds the wind in his fists? Who wraps up the ocean in his cloak? Who has created the whole wide world? What is his name and what is his son's name? Tell me if you know. So who's wrapped up the wind in his fists? Martial arts, right? Striking the blows of God's arm. He's striking down the Assyrians in Isaiah 30. Okay, and I've gone over that whole clip before. I'll put in the comments if I remember. Okay, he's striking down the Assyrians. The first point I used in part 1 was Isaiah 30:30. The Lord will cause people to hear his majestic voice and will make them see his arm coming down with raging anger and consuming fire with cloudburst, thunderstorm, and hail. It goes on to say that he's striking them down with his rod. He's striking them down with his spirit. Okay, spirit and spirit, right? It's the spirit of striking. And when the person who cultivates it the best is going to be a martial artist who is the top martial artist, who's cultivating, he's trying with all his mind, body, heart, and soul, which is the greatest commandment. Love God with all your being. So do martial arts to strike, right, is part of the greatest commandment. It's a martial art order. That is the greatest commandment. All the law and all the prophets is what Jesus said in the New Testament. Hang on these commands, right? Love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your being, and love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, so teach him to obey God through me, or you're not keeping the greatest commandment or the second greatest commandment, because that's not loving God with all your being, and that's not loving your neighbor by pointing him to me and insisting that he obeys God through me, he or she. Okay, so point number 6, Jeremiah 18, I guess it looks like 18:17. Like a wind from the east, I will scatter them before their enemies. I will show them my back and not my face in their day of disaster. So the wind is a marshaling force. Marshal is a play on words for M-A-R-S-H-A-L, I believe it's spelled. Marshal, to order, to arrange, right? So it's a marshaling force of God. It's martial arts and martial arts. Okay. 7. So 1 Thessalonians 4 starts off with with Paul saying no sexual immorality. God taught you to be holy. Don't be sexually immoral. Don't have sex like a pagan. Don't lust. Don't have erotic desire. Eros, a pagan deity. Psyche, a pagan deity. Don't use psychology and erotic desire. He says keep yourself pure and holy. Okay. It goes on in verse 16 to say, for the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in God will rise first. Okay, so only God goes up to heaven and comes down. Only the Son of God is the top martial arts ever possible is me. And I've proven that a million times over my top martial arts challenge. Up to over 8 years, up to $4 million. If I'm compensated $40,000, if I'm not, you pay nothing if you lose. I have world record speed. The only martial arts is about building character. Everyone else is lying about these things, and on and on and on and on. Okay, I've proven it a million times over. Okay, so again, going back to Proverbs 34, who but God goes up to heaven and comes down, who holds the wind in his fists. Another version, whose hands have gathered up the wind. Who's in this martial arts spirit of God, this royal African falcon warrior spirit of God? Nimrod, okay, was before Abraham. Before Abraham I am. In Daniel, God is referred to as the Ancient of Days, right? Before Abraham. And the saying is, like Nimrod, a mighty warrior before the Lord, a saying that Abraham heard. So Abraham was trying to be like Nimrod, a mighty warrior before the Lord. So this is an African spirit in terms of, it's like semantics, but it's, it's that idea of an African martial artist in mighty martial arts spirit. And in Nahum 3, it says Cush had a strength that was boundless. Okay. And Amos 9:7, are you not as the Israelites unto me, O children, are you not as the Cushites unto me, O children of Israel? Are you not the same as them? Okay, verse 17, it says, after that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught together with them in the cloud to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Verse 18, therefore encourage one another with these words. So you're supposed to say, come into the Spirit. The cloud is a gathering of spirit, right? It showers righteousness on the ground is another verse, right? It gathers up the waters of life and it showers them down symbolically. So it says, encourage them to be in the martial arts spirit of God and rallying. The cloud is a rallying point. The gathering, to gather together and be by the gate, which is me, okay? And to be ready to die for God, okay? So again, and that's where they they twist the idea of the rapture, which is a play on words for rape root, because the devil's trying to cut you off before you get to me, okay? Now, I've proven it a zillion times over. Watch these two parts 10 times each until you know exactly what I'm saying. Try to put it in your own words. Comment in your own words to the best of your ability. Watch, people aren't going to do that. Not anytime soon is what I predict, but maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong, okay? But this is more important than anything that's ever happened in human history. Okay, these principles are reality. The Bible's in a confusing way describing what is actually happening. God is actually real. I am actually the top martial artist. I actually draw on the spirit of righteousness with focused moral intensity, walk in the way of righteousness on the path of justice and universal pinpoint and moral precision.